surveillance actually started with physical people watching people. The word surveillance didn't even come into our language until the very beginning of the 19th century, and it was associated with the terror after the French Revolution. During the First World War, there were blimps and sort of crude aircraft that were flying over enemy lines, so it was very visual. It moved then in the 20th century into oral, capturing conversations for use as evidence in criminal proceedings or simply for use as intelligence.
We want to see what's going on in the places that we can't see into. In some cases, it's because we're afraid of the threat that those unseen places may present to us. One of the things that surveillance and that watching may provide is I can reinforce my own sense of self by comparing it with what I see about you and what I see about what I think you are at your core. And that can help me understand whether I'm as different as I think I am or whether we share things in common. And so we watch.
I was in law school during the late 1960s, and there was a lot of electronic surveillance of the student movements that were going on then. And I think that's what first sort of grabbed my interest. I then went on to work for Senator Sam Ervin during the Watergate investigations, and that has kind of kept me in the field most of my professional life. People have suggested that they're very concerned about government collection of information, George Orwell's 1984 and Big Brother. Recently, Thomas Friedman has suggested in his New York Times editorials that we're probably even more concerned about Little Brother, or rather a whole gang of little brothers, who are the private sector collectors of information. All the stores you shop in, your credit cards, every airline ticket you buy, everything that you do is collected by the private sector. And when it's collected by Little Brother, it tends to be also available to Big Brother if he wants it.
There's an unequal power relation between the people who are collecting this information and the people who are providing the information. What I think is really problematic is the fact that people don't know that their personal data is being mined for marketing purposes. You have giant firms like ChoicePoint, which are data aggregators, which buy and sell enormous blocks of people's personal information online. The US government purchased a huge amount of data from ChoicePoint that was personal records from South America and Latin America, took all that information and cross-checked it against the Department of Homeland Security suspected terrorist base. That's definitely crossing a line from like, oh, we're just going to find out what kind of ice cream you like so we can give you a coupon, to really sort of very hardcore data gathering practices that are not different philosophically from the government wiretapping your phone or CCTV cameras watching your every movement in a public space. Every single camera that you walk through on a daily basis, they're not all networked together. They don't have a track of you from the minute you leave your house, every ATM you hit, every grocery store you hit, your work, and then go home. I mean, they're to a certain extent, those are all little silos of data. On the internet, because it's digital interoperable data, it's much easier to come up with these sort of comprehensive records of these movements, which means that you end up getting really, really rich data, not just about people's movements, but about their preferences, about their emotions, about their thoughts about things, their political beliefs, pictures of their friends, their social networks, their contacts. You can find out a huge amount about people just from reading the inbox of their email.
So I'm sitting here in this cafe and I'm trying to figure out how many people here are using clear text type communication methods, because anybody who uses clear text out here in public will be visible to my tools. What I see is people surfing the web. I see people checking their mail. Of course, some of them are using clear text protocols, in which case I have their passwords. When I get a username and password, I can log into their email account. I could tell everyone's machine to send all their traffic through my machine on the way to the internet. That would allow me to inspect everyone's traffic, no matter what it was. And it would also allow me to do something like, let's say, for example, that I want to save some time and I don't want to like go through the hassle of logging into their Amazon account and buying something and then selling that. Let's say I want to go straight for the bank account. Well, it'd be really easy to do, because people will come out in public and log into their bank account, and even though that's a quote-unquote secure connection, what I could do is I could make it look like they're logging into their bank by putting a mock-up of the bank's website on my computer. They think they're logging into their bank, but in actuality, they're logging into my laptop, which is just merely running a web server. And so then they type in their username and password. I merely display a message for them that says something about, sorry, the system's down for maintenance. They give up, go home, and log in, don't know any better. And then I have their username and password to their bank. I log in and I write myself a big fat check. It's simple. It's really, really easy.
Down here you've got users, and mostly what they get is stuff in the newspaper, which may not always be perfectly accurate, and they don't have a good picture of the landscape. All they have is all the warnings, so they become overwhelmed, and they think everything they're doing may be a risky behavior, and at some point they just go, well, it's all risky, I can't do anything. So they stop worrying about it because they think there's nothing they can do to be effective. And what they really need to be doing, and what security professionals need to be doing a better job of, is giving them better information so that they really can be aware of what the true risks are, and making decisions about, okay, I'm going to be really careful in this situation because I know this is high risk. Here, I'm not going to worry as much. So they can focus their worry.
Technology often moves from something that's secreted and that is highly protected into something that's widely adopted and widely used for beneficial purposes. If you look at a technology today like Google Maps, Google Maps is ironic to me because today Google Maps has a capability that when I was in the agency was a very tightly held secret.
We know that human beings aren't able to watch video for long periods of time and be able to still process that information effectively. What we're trying to do is build a platform so that the surveillance systems can become more capable on their own. For example, someone has been harassing one of your employees. Maybe there's actually even a court order restraining that person from approaching your facility. You would like to know if that person's car comes onto your campus, and you would like to know that as soon as possible, not after they're inside of the building, but maybe when the car drives up, detect that license plate number and go investigate that and do that automatically, then that's a big benefit to the security industry. The reason that the company was founded and why people joined the company was because we've all seen those images on television where something bad happened and they captured footage that was really blurry and unusable, and you can't catch the guy that did it.
The reactions of most people to surveillance, the initial reactions of most people are quite positive. For example, in CCTV, most people immediately think of child safety, of keeping the streets safe for people, for women, for minorities, for people who might be targeted in some way. And they're not thinking about social control. They're not thinking about how some authority or big brother might be holding them down. They're thinking about how it can make their life easier and safer. We tend to assume that the predominant response is fear, is uneasiness. And I think for most people, it's about easing fear, it's about comfort, it's about care.
My name is Glyn Meek. I'm the former CEO and President of the World Congress on Information Technology. It was held here in Austin in May of this year, a biennial event around the world. And this year we focused on 3 topics of global interest to society and to the information technology industry. One of those was we focused on privacy and security. And we tried to analyze how those two are often at odds in the 21st century in which we live. One of the things we did to try and illustrate and to bring some of those points home with the Congress is we gave everyone a smart card. So when you registered for the Congress, you got one of these little credit card sized cards, and on that was a fair amount of information about you. Getting to be more and more common, but fraught with a number of challenges as to how much information is the right amount to put on there, and who has access to that information, and what else are you going to use it for? Who owns that information? Do you own it? Or does the organization that puts together the service own that information? Well, there's no right answer.
What I'm working on now is sort of a theory, but it seems to me that you own your personal information. There's no reason why you shouldn't own the sort of behavioral patterns, how you look, how you behave, what you say sort of casually on the street. People are are looking for ways to try to get some control over the increasing amounts of surveillance that are going on, both to find out about what's going on and then to have control over it. Now, my point of view, it comes from a kind of an individual ought to be able to consent to being surveilled, to being imaged by a camera, for example, or not.
One of the issues that a number of people mentioned to me was, well, what if I don't want to give you my information? We're in a society now where you are essentially forced by being a member of society to give society your information. Well, I don't want to. So now what do I do? Because later on, when it becomes necessary to buy something and I don't want to give you my information, you're not going to sell it to me. You won't necessarily have the mechanism to sell it to me. So if I don't want to give it to you, I'm kind of stymied in the 21st century society. That's not good. It takes the choice away upon which Western civilization is built.
Surveillance functions, in many cases, hand in hand with systems of categorization, classification, and administration. Surveillance is information gathering for the purposes of sorting. They are sorting people into categories. You are a woman. You are this age. You are this race, this background, this education level. They can dehumanize, they can classify to the point of no longer being representations of a social, intimate, living person, but rather merely a cold, hard set of facts that plugs into an equation.
There is the potential for discriminatory abuse. Healthcare in particular. We've all read over the last decade about AIDS patients, and certainly early on in the AIDS epidemic, there was a lot of discrimination against people with AIDS. Well, what it did basically was drive it underground. So a lot of people don't admit or don't say that they've got it. Well, once your medical record becomes available to all and sundry on a card, your ability to protect your private information weakens at worst and goes away completely at best.
In the 1960s, they tried to have a national data center, and that was politically opposed. Now we have some credit and marketing information agencies that have an enormous amount of detailed centralized information about every single individual in this country. And of course the government makes use of that. They used to have a department called the Office of Total Information Awareness. And that was shut down by the Congress. It was defunded. But now they call it Terrorism Information Awareness, and it's not much different.
Well, being an American of Arabic heritage, most people ask me what I am, and I'll tell them I'm American, and then they'll say, no, what are you really? I mean, for us personally, we had the 4 of my family members that we were going to visit family. This is about the summer after 9/11, where we actually were randomly picked one after the other, just us 4 from an entire flight of 250 people. So the random search itself, it's not that effective, it's not very random, and they're so focused on the, racial profiling and worried about one group of people, it can actually be very detrimental to security. I think civil liberties come first, and you should protect those as much as you can, because that's the point of being in the United States, the point of the democracy like ours is that you have these rights, they can't be taken away.